Welcome to Recalculating Small Business. Like its award-winning book, Recalculating is dedicated to small business in America. Your hosts are Don Mazzella and Dan Perkins. Don Mazzella is the editor-in-chief of the Small Business Digest. Dan Perkins is a registered investment advisor with 43 years' experience in managing money.
Dan Perkins here, your co-host, along with Don Mazzella of Recalculating for Small Business. Our radio program is dedicated to you, helping the small business owners increase their profits. We draw our name from Recalculating, voted the best small business book of 2017 by the Independent Press. In this book, it features ways to grow your small business. Now, here's Don Mazzella.
Despite what others might say, advertising is the lifeblood of podcasts. Today, we have Marshall Williams. His company, Ad Result Media, is reputedly the most influential ad buyer in the industry. Marshall, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, Marshall, I'm going to start off by asking you a question. How did you come into this space, and what have you learned about podcasts for our audience, which is made up of small business leaders?
A great question. We are an advertising agency, but especially a specialty advertising firm. And for years, we specialized in radio broadcasting, terrestrial radio, AM and FM radio, where the host of each individual program, whether it be news talk or political talk or sports or, rock stations or what have you, the air personality would do ads in a live first-person context for our clients' products and services. Several years ago, there was a shakeup in the radio universe, and some of our on-air personalities were displaced. Contract negotiations didn't get renewed, or radio properties simply needed to cut costs. And we found a few of them who were doing their morning shows or whatever their content was in a digitally delivered on a non-linear, meaning it's not at 9 a.m. in the morning or 6 a.m. or 5 in the afternoon. It was whenever they got around to it. That we began to advertise on those programs, and it worked very well for our clients. And so we began to gravitate more towards the podcasting space, and POD stands for Play on Demand, by the way, a term invented by the Apple people. And it's essentially the same kind of editorial with some different derivations that you might find on radio, but in the on-demand, context of being delivered through a computer or a cell phone.
Well, at least I learned something new. Now I know what podcast, how it got its name. So, Dan, why don't you take over and ask a couple of questions?
I'll do my best. Marshall, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Let me start off by I was fascinated what you were talking about, how the radio business went through transition, and what you said was something that I've been writing about in my commentary a lot. I just finished a piece on the gaming industry, and what you said is that the American consumer wants to decide what they want, when they want it, and how they want to get it. And so that the podcast, if I understand this business, the podcast creates the opportunity for people like Don and I to have a regular radio program, but also to build a constituency using the podcast idea that allows that customer of ours to, and we think of them as customers in addition to listeners, to sign on anytime they want. And what do you, knowing that and knowing you're an avid supporter of it, where do you see that podcast movement going?
Great question, and I want to go back to the first part of what you said is how the consumer absorbs the product. It's on a as wanted basis where they want it. Okay, The proliferation of the smartphone has allowed us to put and consume data in a super mobile environment. And people who want to consume certain types of content, in your case, the business, small, medium business kind of content, may not have the opportunity to listen to it between 9 and 11 in the morning on a particular day of the week. And forgive me if I'm not sure of when your show actually airs, but what this mobility and this consumption through this mobile phone has allowed them to do is to consume your content when they're on the road driving at a later time, or when they're out walking the dog, or when they're driving carpool, or any of those other opportunities. So to answer your question directly, the expansibility of it, if that's the proper word, the expansion potential is staggering. The original podcast consumers were young for the most part because they grew up with this phone in their hand. It was ubiquitous with their life and how they consume things. Now it's gravitating towards an older generation, and the levels of growth in the podcast space are phenomenal at this point. There are shows out there that have achieved, 1 million individual downloads, which is listened over the first 10 days of their lifespan. And heretofore, that is a number that was almost impossible for a broadcaster to reach with that kind of speed.
Well, when Don and I had another program on another network, and it was internet radio, and it was political commentary. And as Mr. Trump became president, Don and I were talking about what's the implication of Mr. Trump. And I, being a money manager, I believe that the previous administration had intentionally tried to hold the economy back. And I said, I think there's going to be a huge opportunity for small business because people were not willing to take risk under the Obama administration in the way they classically have. And we thought there would be a market for people who are interested in owning, starting, or running a small business. And we started in February with virtually no footprint whatsoever. And we just got our number. We're about 140,000 downloads a week, not counting on air or iHeart or Roku. So we think we found a niche, and because the economy is changing, there's probably lots of other niches, but finding that niche helps create content. And I think you'll probably agree with me, but isn't content still king?
It absolutely is. Couldn't agree with you more. And what our company does, what Ad Results Media does, is we connect the content creator, people like yourself, and the advertisers. Our model exists around, as mentioned earlier, we would have these on-air personalities on these radio stations endorse a product or service, whether it be Pro Flowers around Valentine's Day or Mother's Day, or AT&T telephones, AT&T mobile, mobile service, or any number of ZipRecruiter is a brand of ours. There's a company in the mailing and shipping space named Stamps.com. What we have done is take that connectivity between the client and their service or product and connect to this influencer. That's the modern term. The influencer is the host of these programs, and there's literally hundreds of thousands of them out there, and have that host do a educated, informed ad, an editorial perhaps, but it does include an advertising message in it about what they love about that service and what they love about that product, and then we put a call to action in. Go to this website, download this mobile app, or that kind of thing. And I'm excited that you guys have seen that kind of growth in such a short period of time, because it just goes to further the quick-paced growth of this segment of the broadcast space.
Right.
From an audio standpoint, this is the most exciting space out there right now.
Yeah. Marshall, on our previous show, we had a gentleman who founded a company with video cameras, and they're all battery operated, and he sells them for security for small business or for your homes. And just as we finished the show, I said, would you think about a special offer for our listeners? And he jumped like it was like the best thing since sliced bread. I think that with the idea of creating something special for a listener on a program that relates to their business, in our case, is going to get a lot of traction. And finding the right match, and somebody like your company, Marshall, can help. I never thought of myself as an influencer, but now I got to rethink my brain here a little bit. But finding the right combinations, if you would, of relationships where get the greatest synergy for the consumer and also for the sponsor for the program. And I can see where that could create a huge opportunity for you and your company.
You know, and yours as well. So my compliments on building out a robust platform right now in such a short period of time. And I can just imagine one of our clients, Stamps.com, which is a shipping platform. You may have heard the ads out there. They've been around for some time.
I use it.
Yeah. You telling a small, medium-sized business person that they don't have to go to the post office anymore and that they can get accurate postage, and there's a scale on their desk that integrates with their computer. They can simply print the postage off, put it on the package, and then go as far as to hit a pickup button, and then the U.S. Postal Service person will come and pick up their packages from their place of business. That is a fantastic alignment there, and great opportunities for our clients and your show as well.
Yeah. I have a foundation, Songs and Stories for Soldiers, where we ship out MP3 players to veterans all over the country. We use them all the time. I mean, it's my sister puts the packaging together. She calculates the postage, puts it on, and calls the post office, and they come and pick it up. I mean, it's a great service. So, what other kind of companies do you think are our deal in the pods casting space? You've mentioned Stamps.com and others. What other things are you thinking that have tremendous growth opportunities?
That's an excellent question, because when we were traditionally in the radio space, and we still do a great percentage of our business in the terrestrial radio space with the large broadcasters, the CBSs of the world, the iHearts, which I know you guys are on, and the Cumuluses, et cetera. We still do a large percentage of our business there. But traditionally, those targets were business to consumer. Pro Flowers would advertise to the person who needed to send flowers at Valentine's Day to their sweetheart, or mom on Mother's Day, and that kind of thing. So the end user tended to be the consumer who was going to, conduct the transaction.
Right.
What we found in the podcast space, as we've gotten into more of this, there is a better opportunity to reach a business owner, a small to medium business owner, who could consume a product like ZipRecruiter when they're looking for new hires or to fill job opportunities. Stamps.com, same kind of context. We have a company named Betterment, which is it's one of these new automated financial service companies where you can host your 401k if you have a small to medium-sized business and have retirement plans for your employees. They will do it on a web-based, totally separate from having to have an individual in your office manage it. They'll manage it. They'll execute it. It's really a remarkable product, and so much easier to have a cloud-based program than to have it internally, and cheaper.
Yeah.
So there is a great opportunity to reach this business-to-business owner as well. That's an expansion on what we've seen from a radio standpoint.
I would like you to look in your crystal ball, because I can't tell. But Don, do I have time for one more question before we hit a break?
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm curious as to you've talked about where you see the podcast industry going. Where do you see the typical over-the-air AM/FM stations? Where is that going?
That's an excellent question, because there's a lot of questions about, you got these large ownership groups, and what are they going to do, because radio seems to be a medium that that is not being consumed by this younger generation. Well, it still is, and it's still growing. It's just growing at a slower pace than it had in 10 or 15 years ago. Okay, it's still the best opportunity for people to be introduced to new music. It still has the largest political talk programs that are out there. Radio is transitioning into a more digitally delivered space. The iHeart has an iHeart app and things like that. And I think you're going to see those groups begin to create content specifically for the digital space, for this podcaster on-demand space. And so I think as they pivot, they're going to get more nimble. They need to. And you'll see more and more of their traditionally radio-based on-air talent move into the digital space. I think that is something we'll see in the future. I'm hopeful that that is something we'll see in the future because they have great talent and great content.
All right, take a break, and I'll ask you another one when we come back. Thank you.
Want to know more about health savings accounts for your company or yourself? Go to 2hsa.com and get a free employer's primer. Health savings accounts are a cost-effective way of offering health care benefits to your employees and yourself. HSAs build retirement funds for your employees, improve morale, and reduce your health care benefit cost. For a free employer guide to HSAs, go to 2hsa.com. That's 2hsa.com.
We're talking with Marshall Williams, whose agency, Ad Results Media, who is amongst the most influential, if not the most influential, ad buyer in the podcast industry. I'd like to jump in here with a question, Marshall, if I may, and ask you, our audience is made up of small business owners in many, many different fields. What are the opportunities for them to create a podcast that might be of interest? And what do you see needs for?
One of the great things about the on-demand podcast digital space is that it's allowed so many more voices and points of views and interests to be addressed. There was no real way for a consumer who had an interest in, rugby or something that was fairly niche to produce and create a radio program that exists. The internet has allowed all these people to get into the space that heretofore didn't have the technology or the means or what have you to enter that space. There's a lot of interesting content out there that's very niche in nature, as mentioned. There's cooking shows, there's wine shows, there are golf podcasts, there are podcasts about specific industries that are highly specific. There are doctor health segments about certain components of the medical community. And the audiences may not be, enormous, but the people who listen consume it very readily and they're very sticky relative to the content. So I think the podcast space allows a lot more people, including small and medium-sized business people, who can offer information, content, advice, reviews, etc., on their particular niche in the business space. It allows them a voice out there that heretofore they couldn't. It wasn't available for them to get their voice out.
I'd like to ask one more question, Dan, because I'd like to talk about cost. One thing about podcasts, they're relatively inexpensive to start and run. They take a lot of time thereafter. What are your thoughts on that, Marshall?
The barrier to entry is relatively low. We made jokes early on about this guy does a podcast in his garage or in his basement, and they weren't necessarily jokes because the initial entry point from a technology standpoint is a laptop and a microphone and that kind of thing. So the barrier to entry is very low. As you get to see some scale in your podcast, it does. The ones that do well are the ones that are produced relatively in a high level fashion, and that is more expensive to execute. But the entry is cost to entry there is relatively inexpensive, and the ability to monetize it in our context, okay, because we're an ad buyer in this podcast space, the ability to monetize it is pretty strong because we've had clients who called us and said, for whatever reason, we have a large percentage of our buyers who are rugby fans, okay? And so we sought out rugby podcasts. Now, some of them are international and such, but where else in the universe would you be able to find a program concentrating on rugby that these people could do ads for our clients in? It's a remarkable space from that perspective.
Dan, back to you.
Well, Marshall, I have what I hope you'll believe is a great story that I give you permission to tell. 2 weeks ago, I do radio and television, and I've been a regular on the China Global Network Television, and I have to go up from Sanibel to Tampa. It's a 3-hour ride, and my driver, the driver who picked me up 2 times ago, he has a podcast. Now think about this, Marshall. He has a podcast of 1950s to 1960s polka music. And he's been doing it for like 10 years. And he's now on podcast. It's 1 hour. He loves doing it, and he loves playing polka music. He has a huge collection. But you were talking about how segmented you can be. There's an example of a guy who's doing what he wants to do. He drives a car, but he also loves to play polka music for people who want to listen to it. Anyway, let me move on. You've got, from the way you have described it, there is some disruption in the traditional radio space, and part of that disruption is caused by the podcast. As Don mentioned earlier, we're kind of going both ways. We're on 12 radio stations, but we also have a good-sized audience that's growing every month on podcasts. So we're doing kind of both. And is that a challenge? Is that difficulty to promote somebody who's in both medias, or is the on air simply a bonus to what they're doing with podcasts?
I think both of them. I think it's a bonus because I think you'll have a certain percentage of consumers. Let me back up just a half step. Podcasting is still in its infancy from an industry standpoint, and there's enormous levels and numbers of people out there who aren't even aware of what a podcast is. Okay, and as it becomes more mainstream, as it becomes more accepted out there from a way to deliver content, the audience is going to grow. There are consumers, as you mentioned, as your show is presented, who traditionally listen to radio, and they consume your product from a radio standpoint, which is great. I think the addition of radio with podcasting is very fortunate on your guys' part, because it's going to bring a new element of people who might not have been able to hear your terrestrial radio program because they weren't available. It was on a time that didn't work for them, wasn't on an affiliate nearby. Now they have the opportunity to consume it on a digital, as wanted, as needed, and convenient basis. So I think you guys are in a very good spot.
Well, I appreciate that. Let me go back, focus on you again. As somebody who's a visionary in this business, are you finding it easier or still struggling to convince traditional sponsors to think about podcasting?
Fantastic question. There are two sort of. We are a performance marketing agency, so when we advertise on a particular show, we try and track what kind of response we get from it. Okay, we might say enter my media code at checkout, and we try and get a handle on how well it performs from a dollars spent standpoint. From a performance standpoint, we look at the podcast space as it's exceptional in terms of the level of performance our clients see from it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The big branded advertisers that we also work with, and we've worked with Nestle over the years, and Purina Pet Foods, and AT&T, and a few other big branded companies, they tend to still look at podcasting as a niche. Oh, wait till it gets some scale to it, or what have you. So we're waiting on those big branded companies to come to us and say, we think this is a viable option for us. We want to really get into the space. Then you're going to have some real changes in the industry, because the way the branded companies, the big automakers, the big packaged food companies, or the big packaged product goods companies like Procter & Gamble, the way they buy media is much more broad scale. So it will change the landscape. It will be our performance marketing companies, the ones I mentioned earlier, that track their leads, are still going to be an element of it, but you will also have Ford Motor Cars, and you will also have, Procter & Gamble products, and, Purina Pet Foods and things like that in the space. So we're excited about what the upside potential is here in this space. But that's what the landscape looks like right now.
Marshall, we had a guest a few weeks ago who's in what they call the FinTech business, which is alternative banking to finance small business. And he said when the market collapsed in 2008, the banks just walked away from the small business market. Now that the economy is starting to come back, the banks want to get into the business, but they found that this whole new group of people who are non-bank banks have taken over their space, and now they're really having to fight to try and get small business back into the bank. They love advertising. They love talking about their opportunity to small business on programs like ours, because they don't have to fight with airspace, and they don't get a 30-second spot. They get 15, 20 minutes, 25 minutes to talk about what they do, so they can have a real conversation with a potential borrower. And that's one of the things that this space, I see, is one of the best advantages of the pod system, is that you can give us a sponsor and we can be talking about whatever it is they're doing, not for 30 seconds or a minute. We can do that kind of commercial, but we can have people on for the company and talk about what they're doing, and make an impression in 12 markets that they may not be in, or not doing things. And I think that's a tremendous leverage for the podcasting business.
Right, agreed. And the great thing about the way podcasting, or who consumes podcast, is they are, as you mentioned, they're the people who listen to it are wide open to these new opportunities, like you mentioned,
yes.
the non-bank bank. Okay.
Yeah.
The cloud-based, money management company, where you don't have to have a representative at a brokerage firm. They'll handle your investments or 401k in a cloud-based platform. We have another company that's in the insurance business. No agent needed. It's a company called Policy Genius. You call Policy Genius, or you go to their website, you fill out a form. They submit back whatever kind of insurance quotes you might need, life insurance, health insurance, etc. It's remarkable how well this new brand of business that's outside the traditional realms as we've known it, like a brick and mortar bank.
Yeah.
It's remarkable how well they're doing in this space. So excited about it.
Marshall, we find that Don, who does almost all the legwork, we're into November as far as schedule. Yeah, and as more and more people hear about the show or listen to the show, who are in business, who want to get into this space, we get contacts. And so we're building a network going out into the end of the fourth quarter, of people wanting to wait in line to get on our program to talk about their product or service. I mean, it's education. It's fascinating for me, and it's a new medium that I learn every day. And I agree with you. I'm not as well versed in it as you are, but I see, it's the whenever we talk to advertisers about everybody wants to know what our podcast numbers are. And they don't care about the fact that we're right now in about 4 million households around the country in our 12 networks. That's like, okay, that's fine, but we really want to know what your podcast numbers are. Like the on air is almost worthless. They're more interested in the pod numbers. And I think, if I understood you, people like us are people that are looking to expand their business. Don't give up the possibility of using both.
No, not at this point. As mentioned, I think terrestrial radio still has some legs. The podcast space is growing at a much faster rate, though, and I think that's part of the reason we're getting that kind of feedback.
Don, do I have room for one more question?
Well, Marshall, I was going to jump in and ask you, because somebody just emailed me across the desk. If you're a small business and you want to advertise, how do they reach you? And how do in general, how do you see smaller businesses utilizing podcasts? I think there's a tremendous amount of possibility out there. Podcasting, one thing about podcasting we have to consider is that there's no geographic or regional limits to it. A podcast could easily be heard in London, England, as it can in Connecticut, okay? Mm-hmm. Or Las Vegas, Nevada, or Bakersfield, California. So a small business would have to consider that when thinking about the space. If they have a product or service that they would like to market to a universal audience in a particular vertical or niche, there's lots of programming out there. It's also the cost to advertise is all dependent upon the scale of the particular show. And so since there are plenty of shows out there, and literally thousands and thousands of them, there are probably opportunities for a small to medium business to test in a cost-effective fashion. What we do when we start with smaller shows first, increase the level of spend that we have with those shows, or increase the breadth of shows that we have as we see it working, and then grow from there. We believe in incremental growth, where we prove out the success and ratchet up the marketing dollars as we've seen that success. You can learn more about our business. Our website is adresultsmedia.com. And if you do want to contact us, there's a contact tab on that website, adresultsmedia.com. That's ad with one D. There's a lot of good information there about how we execute and things like that. And so I would encourage any of your listeners who might want to find out more about this to go to the website and check it out. Okay. And Dan, you get to ask the final question.
You kind of took away my thunder, and that's okay. I was just curious as to if Marshall if I could maybe stretch the question a little different way. Where would somebody who's never done a podcast, I mean, should they go to somebody else before they go to Marshall Williams, or should they come to Marshall Williams?
Oh, we're the leader in the space there. I know you would expect me not to say anything else. I certainly would hope so. But we do maintain about a 35 to 40% market share in that space, and that allows us the opportunity to have first right at new content. Our pricing structure is preferable. Yeah. The way we execute is systematic and pretty seamless. And our customer service levels are solid. We believe in taking care of our customers pretty well. Yeah. And it works. That's the other thing, and I don't want to.
That is clearly the element of the internet that Don and I have noticed. The big box stores, the malls have forgotten how to take care of their customers, and the online service providers bend over backwards to take care of their customers. And there's a huge difference between the two, and it seems to be growing all the time.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, a lot of these online companies have figured out that is the more responsive you are to your customers, even if it's we'll look after it, we'll get on it. If you have a problem, that kind of thing. They very much, the consumer very much gravitates toward that. I agree with you about a lot of that.
We've been talking with Marshall Williams, the president of Ad Results Media, perhaps the most influential ad buyer in the podcast industry. Marshall, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us. It's been illuminating to me, and I hope to our audience as well.
Thank you, Marshall.
Happy to do it. Thank you very much for having me.
You bet. Take care.
Dan Perkins here from Recalculating.biz with your featured book. I want to tell you about a recent interview I had with Bob Bethel, a turnaround specialist with lots of success in small business. Bob's new book is Strengthen Your Business, Fail-Proof Strategies for Small Business. He tells us of his life successes and failures that have made him and his clients so successful. Over the years, Bob has brought 77 companies back from the brink and changed them into thriving, profitable businesses. His energy is amazing, and at 74, he proves that you can still have a great deal to give others if you just try. His suggestions are easy to understand and very helpful. One insight struck me was that most companies do not have a plan. The old Chinese proverb says, if you don't know where you're going, then any road will take you there, is true today. Bob Bethel's book, Strengthen Your Business, can be found at Amazon.com or can be ordered at your local bookstore. This has been Dan Perkins with your Recalculating.biz featured book.
Well, Dan, our next guest has invented something that I think belongs in every American house. I know it's in our household because I saw them at a press preview, took one of their products home. It's called Batteroo. I'll let him tell you all about it. But join me in welcoming Bob Roohparvar. He's president and CEO of Batteroo. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's a great pleasure being with you. I love you and your program, and it's an honor for me to be part of your program.
Well, first, tell us what your product does before anything else.
Well, our company name is Batteroo, and product name is Batteroo, actually. It's like a battery, and we got some linguistic folks to help us to come up with a name. They said Batteroo, like Yahoo. It kind of rolls nicely, battery and Batteroo. So since we are in a battery complement business, we thought we should call ourselves Batteroo. Most people do not know that billions of batteries thrown away every year, with only 20% of its original energy has been used, and the other 80% gets thrown away. So what we do in Batteroo, we try to revive those batteries, and we tap into those energy and extend the life of the battery by 600% in some cases, by basically having ability to go and harness that energy and being able to extend the life of the battery. So that's basically what we do. It's a Batteroo. It's a micro-thin, reusable stainless sleeve that wraps around your battery, your AA battery, your C battery, your D battery. They come in different form factor and has electronic circuitry that taps into the remaining energy that otherwise would have been thrown away. There are 15 billion batteries consumed every year and end up in a landfill. Imagine that, billions of these batteries, they still have significant amount of energy left in them. This is very, very expensive energy, and people do not realize that. For example, the analogy would be very simple. If you buy a brand new toothpaste, and if you squeeze it from the top 5-6 times, the 7th time you squeeze, nothing comes out. But since you understand there's plenty of paste in the tube, you start squeezing from the bottom. You don't throw it away in the trash. However, the batteries, when your device says you're running low on the batteries, you need to replace it. You do not realize that you still got 70-80% significant amount of energy left in the battery. You throw it away because you don't have any way to squeeze the thing out, and you don't see the energy in it. And they end up in a landfill, and so it's a very, very expensive source of energy. Imagine if your utility bill was $200 a month, and if you had to power up your house with alkaline battery, your $200 a month would have been converted to $1 million a month. So it's a very, very expensive source of power. However, it gets thrown away with significant amount of energy left in them. And so in Batteroo, we have come up with a technology that we tap into the energy that is left in the battery, and we squeeze all the juice out of the battery before you throw it away. Hence, we extend the life of the battery.
Oh, I have to tell you, Dan. I didn't believe this until I put it in there. We had just one example. We had a clock that stopped running. We put it in, and by golly, it's still running 3 weeks later. Same battery that was supposed to be dead. So we know it works. Now, Dan, I know you always come up with good questions to ask, so I'll turn it over to you.
No pressure there, huh? Thank you for joining us on the show today, Bob. I want to know is how, so if I understand your business model, you are supplying the wrapper to the consumer who has the battery in their house.
Yes.
Okay. And so when your wrapper can't produce any more juice in the battery, that's when the battery gets thrown out.
Absolutely.
And goes to the landfill. Okay, so let's take Don's case. He took the battery, thought it was bad, out of his clock. He put your wrapper on it, put it back in the clock. It's now worked for 3 weeks. Did I understand you to say, I want to make sure I understood it. Did I understand you to say that there could be batteries that the consumer is throwing away could still have as much as 60% of their power?
Absolutely. There was a study done by Dr. Zinneker, and he presented his paper in the International Conference on Battery Recycling, and he calculated, and he went to a recycling center, and he grabbed tens of thousands of batteries out of the recycling bins, and he measured those batteries, and he found out that, as I said, there are 15 billion batteries consumed every year, alkaline batteries included. 20% of all batteries thrown away, 20% of all batteries thrown away still have 93% energy left in it. That means there are 20% of these batteries get thrown in the landfill with significant amount of energy, which is almost 93%, almost full. 30% of batteries that are thrown away still have 84% energy left in it. It is mind-boggling that that this significant amount of waste is being created by people buying these batteries, very expensive source of energy, and they get thrown in the garbage, and they're generating a hazardous, environmental hazardous condition. Manufacturing these things, these batteries every year, it puts 1.2 million tons of CO2 in the air. So it's there was a study done. They said green gas emission are major environmental concern due to their potential effect on global climate changes. And there was a study done by California Department of Resources. It said that battery production and manufacturing was listed as a major source of greenhouse gas emission in the study that was done in 2010-2011 by California Department of Resources and Recycling. And by the way, if you imagine 15 billion batteries, they end up in a landfill each year. You put them on top of, if you place these batteries on top of one another, you will go to the moon, you wrap around the moon 2 times, and you will come back to Earth. These are the number of batteries end up in the landfill every year. And a study has shown only 2% of these batteries get recycled. And the reason for that is, even though everybody would love to recycle and everybody's encouraged to recycle, it is very expensive to recycle. So it is more expensive to recycle the alkaline battery rather than manufacture. So people will always find the easier way to say, okay, I don't care about saving money, I'm saving the environment, I will go and I will not to increase my profit. So the battery company, they do not recycle the batteries. Only 2% gets recycled. And as I said, it is a very expensive source of energy. And the way that we do that, that if you look at the 15 billion batteries that end up in the landfill every year, in U.S. we got about 3.5 billion. The rest of the globe has about 12 billion units of alkaline battery. And the way that we came up with this idea is my brother, he's also a co-founder and executive chairman in this company. He has over 500 patents under his belt. He got probably another 300 patents that are in process of getting approved. So he has a major number of patents that he has under his belt. And he was on a vacation in Tahoe with his kids, and they were at midnight. The kids, they wanted to play some game, and they ran out of the battery. And he always carries this a whole bunch of batteries, a recycled battery, and he started measuring the voltages with a voltmeter, and he saw that a lot of these batteries, they have 1.3, 1.35 volts, and a brand new battery has about 1.5 volts, and according to the battery company, you can go all the way to 0.8 volts before they completely, die. So he came to me and he said, you have been doing 30 years of power management and, with a PhD in electrical engineering and your expertise in power management, is there any way that we can do something to extract the energy out of these batteries? And then we said, no problem. I sat down and we designed a circuit that basically boosts the voltage. And then we did some testing. As we tested, we found out that, yes, we could extract a lot of energy out of the battery. Again, depends on a different type of application. The application that takes more energy out, with a higher current, then it has a shorter lifespan. Therefore, we can really extend the life of the battery significantly because maybe it has 80% energy left in it before they get thrown away, versus some devices maybe has only 30% energy left before you throw away. So we can say that on average people will have the benefit of using the Batteroo technology in order to extend the life of the battery. And that's how we came up with the idea. And then we went and built the company and built the circuitry and the technology that as I said, most people do not realize that they throw batteries away with significant amount of energy left in them. And so we can squeeze all the juice out of the battery before they get thrown away, and then you can reuse the same sleeve over and over and over. And our technology, basically allows you to achieve this improvement by miniaturizing mechanical design, miniaturizing industrial design, electronic and IT packaging design, which wouldn't have been possible, maybe 10 years ago. So
let me ask you a question. Do regular batteries, alkaline batteries, lithium batteries, are they all the same in terms of their rechargeability or recovery, or are basic some batteries better at it than others?
So that's an excellent point. We basically boost the voltage, and we don't care about the chemistry. So we are chemistry independent. However, your point that you brought up is extremely important with regard to lithium battery. For example, if you look at the lithium battery, the major brand advertised that this is going to last 9 times longer compared to alkaline battery in certain applications. And then, you say, okay, then if the alkaline battery capacity, let's say it's 3,000 milliamp hours, if the lithium battery is going to last 9 times, it should have 27,000 milliamp hour capacity. But in reality, alkaline battery has 3,000 milliamp hour capacity, and lithium battery happens to have 3,000 milliamp hour, capacity. So the capacity is exactly the same. However, the discharge curve, as we look at it, is very flat, and that's why alkaline battery, lasts 9 times longer in certain applications. We do exactly the same thing. They've done it chemically. We are doing it electronically. However, the problem with the lithium battery is also that they start about 1.5 volts. voltage, nominal voltage, and they do drop to about 1.3 volts, and they stay at 1.3 for a long time. But we basically not only extending the life of the battery, however, we also improve the performance of the battery because we boost the voltage to 1.5 volt, for example, and the device sees a brand new battery all the time. So imagine you put a flashlight, you put some alkaline battery in the flashlight. As you use it, as the battery gets older and older because due to the usage, you see that the light intensity gets smaller, gets degraded, gets smaller and smaller. And so what we do is basically maintain the voltage at 1.5 volt at a very high level, and by doing that, you see a brightness, full brightness all the way. For example, if you put it in a toy car that runs, a toy train, for example, that goes around the track, as you put a brand new battery in there, it slows down. The train will slow down and keep slowing down. It comes to a grinding halt. You put a Batteroo sleeve on a brand new battery and you put it in there, it will maintain a peak performance, just like a brand new battery continuously, and it goes much, much, much faster than the one without the battery.
Dan, can I interrupt here and tell you that I also had an A battery like that, and did exactly what he said, and to one of those rundown battery flashlights. And you know what? He's right. So we try to test every product, Dan,
Sure.
And I just have to tell you, the reason he's on this program on my part is the fact that everything they said is true. But the question is, how much does their product cost, and where is it available?
Right now, it's available on our website as a direct. People can get on Batteroo.com. Batteroo is just like battery. Takes a Y out and puts two O's in there, so it becomes Batteroo.com. They can go and order a sleeve for AA, AAA is about $2.50. So we have a pack of 4. Because every household has about at least 25 different battery-operated devices in the United States, and on the average, we go through 70 to 80 batteries a year. So we thought we should sell a 4-pack for about $9.95.
So it's 4 sleeves, 4 battery sleeves in the package, and it's how much money?
It's about $10.
4 batteries for $10. And what does it cost to buy a new battery? 4 new batteries.
Well, okay. We don't sell the battery. We just sell we sell the sleeve that wraps around the battery.
I understand, but I'm trying to help the consumer look at what they pay for a battery. If they spend $10 for your 4 sleeves, and if I heard you correctly, you can reuse them, so they can. Is there a life expectancy on the sleeves? Or they'll just keep on going forever?
That's a very good point. I think we can, if you're careful using it, you can use it over and over and over. We've gone through, extensive testing. We used it over 150 times and still was perfect. So there's, it's a mechanical wear down. If people misuse it electronically, there's, you can use it forever. There's nothing wrong with it. So the cost of sleeve for a battery is about $2.50. A cost of AA battery, let's say, if you go on the average, let's say it's about $1. If you can extend the life of the battery by 6x, we put it in a GPS, for example, that Garmin has, and we had independent tests done by UL, which is one of the most prestigious lab in the world. And also we have done some other independent testing with another international prestigious lab, MetLab, that is called MetLab, that they verified that, for example, UL certified that, if you use Batteroo sleeve with a GPS device, it can extend the life of the battery by 600%. So imagine, instead of using 6 batteries, $6, you spend about $2.50. Now it already paid for itself. Now, you can reuse it hundreds of times. So there's tremendous amount of saving. It is not only saving money; it's also saving environment. Of course, battery company would not, battery industry wouldn't like us because it will significantly reduce the number of batteries that they sell. But it's really good for consumer, and it's good for environment as well.
Can I?
Don, how much time do we have?
We have 4 or 5 minutes, but can I interrupt here and point out to this audience, we have the traditional problem. Here's the inventor of the product that, as far as I can determine, has very little fallback or downsize, and who's explaining it. And then Dan comes in and really explains the value of it. And most small businesses do not have the ability often to explain the true value. And we hope in our program to do that for our audience. And that's all I want to say, Dan. Now you can ask a question, but I really think it's important because Batteroo, as far as we can determine, is one of the best products we've come across in a long time.
You're selling it only since we have not much time left. You can buy it online. Is it sold in any stores, or are you talking to anybody like Amazon or anybody else about the sale of the product?
Well, there's a tremendous amount of interest in different retailers that we have spoken with, but for right now, the easiest route for us is to handle all the orders directly through our own e-commerce website, and we'll be happy to, because we would like to make that connection with the consumer and make sure that they get all the support that they needed directly from us and our engineering team and our customer service team. One of the things that I would like to also bring up is, we were very fortunate that we found out that CNN Money, that they had 36 coolest gadgets of the year in 2015, and Batteroo was selected as number 9 most innovative, coolest gadget of the year. And then, then they had some of the very, very major companies, Apples and Galaxies of the world, Samsungs of the world. They were, toward the end while we were number 9. So it was a great honor to have that. And then we were selected by Frost and Sullivan with regards to price, performance, value, leadership award of the year for last year. So it's been really nice to get recognition from folks like yourself, CNN Money, and others. When we went on Indiegogo initially and promoted our product, as you know, Indiegogo is a crowdfunding source, and they basically promote a part, to support the innovation. And we had almost $500,000 worth of product that we sold over a very short period of time. So we've been extremely fortunate to have people, folks such as yourself, to support us and get us get the word out with regards to the.
Well, we're really glad, Bob, that you were with us today. Tell us again your website and spell it out for our audience.
It's Batteroo, BATTEROO.com. Batteroo.com.
Well, we have to have you back later on, early next year, to find out how you've been doing, because as far as I'm concerned, it's one of the most innovative products I've seen this year and in past years. Thank you so much.
No, it was an interesting interview, and good luck with your sales. And I agree with Don. We should have you back in a year or next year to see how sales are progressing. Interesting idea. Thank you for being on the show with us today.
Thank you for joining us on Recalculating. We hope the information you received on today's episode was helpful to you in starting and growing your business. Please go to our website, recalculating.biz, to contact us, to listen to past shows, and see special offers. Until next time, remember, if you grow, we grow. Join us next week for more helpful ideas to make your business a great success. Recalculating, a program designed to help you be successful.